Okay, guys, welcome to our second session for the semester. Um, Following up on the first session, just wanted to indicate to you some changes that have occurred because of changes in registration. The vast majority of groupings have not changed in terms of the schedule of presentations for the chapter teaching projects that you have. So we still have the groups 1 to 5 not changing. Others can confirm this. Ms. Ramsame has turned up. So Ms. Ramsame, you have been assigned to, if we're going to take off this color, you've been assigned to chapter 9, being in communities, with somebody who isn't here today, but she was here last week, Sparkle Joseph. The due date for your presentations would be on April the 17th. The others haven't changed. I think there was one group in this between 7 and 8 that had 3 people in it, but that person left. So I think I dropped them off. I think it was Mohammed and Jailal. I'm not sure. But we have a situation now. Chelsea isn't here. Miss Mohammed, Miss Kimberly Mohammed, you have been assigned to a group with Chelsea Richardson. Chelsea isn't here today, but she was here last week. She's aware of this time frame. So you can reach out in the group chat to see if you could get onto these individuals to be able to determine your the level of preparation that you're going to be dealing with. Presentation 9 deals with chapter 12 of the DAF textbook, Power and Influence. And chapter 10 is where I think a lot of the changes took place. Mr. Fabian is here today with us. So he has been able to ascertain, and Kamraj also, or Abigail, has turned up today. So the two of them are the 2 people who are here, who are assigned to this last chapter for the May 1st on leading change from the DAFT. The person who came in, Rihanna Peters, she, I'm not seeing her yet, but I did communicate with her via email. So what I can do for you guys is, I'm unsure if she's, well, I'm not sure if she's responding to her emails, but you all can let me know. I'll give you Fabian and Abigail, take this ID number down so that you'll know how to email her. Her number is 70796. That might be her. Who knows? Oh, Marcel. Hello. Can Marcel please identify who they are? Can Marcel please identify who you are? It's an external student. Hello, Marcel. I think, how would I pronounce that first name? Might be somebody using the profile from somebody else. Anyway, coming back to what I was talking about. Who is it? Kimberly and oh God, you know yourselves, right? I'm trying to remember the second person. It's not coming to mind at this point. Right, Kimberly and Fabian. Take note of this ID number for Rihanna, 70796. So you could email her, the student email. That'll be 70796@my.costat.edu.tt. All right. So hopefully you'll be able to communicate with her. Hopefully we'll see her soon. Okay. All right. Can Marcel please identify who they are, please, if they're in this class? Because yes, Marcel.
Sparkle Joseph.
Right, Sparkle. Welcome. So I guess you're using somebody else's equipment, right?
Yeah.
All right, Sparkle.
Right here. Okay.
You, Miss Ramsume, is in class today, and hopefully, Miss Ramsume, have you joined the WhatsApp chat group?
Yes, I have.
Right. So you'd have to touch base with Miss Joseph to be able to start to meet about this assignment that you have due here. All right. So I think I've dealt with the shopkeeping for now. Other than that, as I said, we still have this person who's not turned up in class yet, so we're gonna have to pay attention. But at least Abigail and Fabian, you all can get going with the preparation for that by at least first of all reading the textbook. As I said before, the textbooks are on the e-classroom. Okay, they are here. This is the Exploring Leadership, and this is the DAFT here, the Leadership Experience. These are the textbooks you're utilizing for this course. These are the course outline. These personality tests information will be coming, and you'll understand it when we start to do the content, what the purpose is. This scheduled document here, I'll have to update this, but I'm going to wait until class is closed before I do a final update for this. That's the document that we've been looking at over here. All right, in terms of the layout, the scheduling for presentations and whatnot. Okay. Everybody here has been to the e-classroom so far, right? I mean, I can tell if people have been. Let's see. Yeah, most people look like they've been here. All right, let's see the next batch. Yep. Even Rihanna's been here last 3 hours ago, so I don't know why she's not here at this point. All right. Okay. Maybe she's at work or something. All right. And this is where I loaded the video recording of the previous session that people missed. So today's session, the recording will come in the same section here below. I'll add it in here so that if you want to review something or you miss something, you can always come back here and get it. Anybody has any further questions they want to ask about the other exercises? I would recommend that you go through the recording and you go over the document in terms of the assessment and evaluations and try and get yourself acclimatized. How many of you all did the first question here for assignment 5? Writing up your reflections on what your expectations are for the course. How many of you all did that as per my instructions from the last class? You could do a hand up kind of thing. Right? You don't have to lie, you know. If you didn't do it, you know you have to do it now. So I know Abigail would not have known about it. Neither would Fabian. So those guys are and Miss Ramsime would also be a thing, but the others, I will urge you to try and get that done as soon as possible, so that you wouldn't you'll be guessing at it later on in terms of what your expectations were at the beginning, as opposed to what they end up being at, how you feel about those expectations coming down to the end. That's something that you want to pay attention to. All right, I see 2 hands left up. Any questions that you want to ask? All right, no questions there. All right, so that then brings us into today's session of what we're going to be doing. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the introduction and chapter 1 of the course. All right, so I want to do this in a particular way so I can see hands. All right, I guess you all wanted. All right, you guys can see this? Let me know if it's clear.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool.
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you have a question, I'm not going to be able to see if your hands go up. So I would expect that if you want to ask a question, feel free to just open your microphone up and say something, okay? Don't be afraid. Again, the questions that you're going to have should be prompted by the content that we're looking at here. All right. Okay, so let's look at what this chapter is about. The first thing I'm going to be looking at here is the course description that is in the course outline. So the first thing we want to look at is the fact that this is an introductory course in leadership. It's not meant to be the definitive course in leadership, ethics, and governance, but it's an area of concern that the college has identified that in the context of our experiences in the world around us, there seems to be a lack of good examples of leadership around us, and we tend to see leadership in the context of how it's occurring in the environment around us. And unfortunately, sometimes what we see is not something that we actually like. So again, the main thing is introductory in nature. It will focus a lot on your personal experiences with leadership, either from your own leadership experiences or your experiences with other leaders, and we're going to apply some level of self-analysis to that. The exercise that we're going through, as you can see, for those of you who have paid attention to the assessments, is going to be hinged a lot on exploration of yourself, self-assessment, and your value systems. So there's a lot of questioning that should take place during this class, which is why I'm saying you should pay attention to when you have questions, ask them. And then we're going to be attempting to apply these tools in your own life, especially the tools about ethics and overall leadership decision making. So objectives of the course, or what we refer to as the learning outcomes, these are pretty standard and straightforward. Comprehend and apply. Okay, we seem to have Shivani is here. Or she dropped off from before. All right. Okay, so this is what causes a bit of a problem sometimes. Let me try something here to see if this helps out. Should make it a little easier for me. All right, can you guys see this here now? Is it large enough for you?
I can see it.
Yeah, is it large enough? I need to pay attention to the side tab here because ever so often I might need to be bringing people in and going back and forth might be too much of a problem. So if everything clear for everybody, that'll be great. Janet?
Yes, sir. It's good for me.
All right, good. Okay. Okay, so as I said before, we want to be able to examine the theories of leadership that currently exist in the world around us, and kind of like take note of what's taking place. So we're going to do an examination of that. We're going to try to apply and understand the tools for ethical decision making that exist. So again, there's some exercises that we're going to be doing in that. We want you to create a plan that applies to yourself for developing your own leadership plan moving forward, which is one of the assignments that you have. And then we have putting you into teams in such a way that it demonstrates that you kind of understand and have a better awareness of how teams should operate and how they should work. So we're going to be looking at that stuff. I know that most people hate teams or group work, as we refer to it in COSTAT. But here, hopefully, we'll have a better experience. Yes, somebody has a question? Shivani? See, your mic is open, so I'm wondering if you had a question. All right. Report on leadership. Well, we're going to be examining some of the issues that face leadership in our environments around us, locally, regionally, as well as internationally. But we're going to focus a lot on your personal experiences in that regard. And this is the one that is a little tricky, because we want, at the end of this course, for you to begin to display and modify your behaviors so that it indicates to us that you have appreciated the philosophy of leadership that this program is going to be trying to expose you to. So what do you all understand by behavior modification? Now, I think in this class there are a fair number of psychology, social work, and sociology students, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you understand by behavior modification, by that concept?
The change in pattern of human behavior.
In what sense? How do we go about changing behaviors in people? Malik, I'm seeing your mic coming on and off. Are there any psych and soc people in the class here? If not, have you not? Some of you did Psych 103, Understanding Human Behavior. Ask yourself a question. How do you change behaviors that you don't like about yourself? Or how would you change? How many people here are parents or have children? All right. So let me ask one of you all to take the lead here. Ms. Samuel, if you're willing. So you could open your mic and have a chat with me. Denicia? Or having problems? All right. So Denicia, how old is your child?
6 is the
Right.
oldest.
6, and you have others?
2-year-old.
Okay, right. So the 6-year-old is the one that you're probably working a lot with at this point in time, yes?
Yes, sir.
More so than the 2-year-old. But why is the 6-year-old important for you to look at? Are they girls or boys?
The 6-year-old is a girl and the 2-year-old is a boy.
All right. Now, when you want to change their behavior about something, what do you do?
I tell them about what the pattern that they're developing and what I expect them to do.
Right. So you speak to them.
Mhm.
What was your experience growing up in terms of how your behavior was modified by your parents when they saw or saw you do something that they didn't like? I know I could tell you from my personal experience what used to happen.
Good
You used to get blows, right? All right. So in essence, therefore, when we talk about behavior modification, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do something here to want you to change a particular type of behaviors or a set of behaviors. The problem with external stimulation, such as you speaking to your child or punishing your child in whatever fashion that we choose to punish in today's environment. The problem is that in the absence of those external stimulus, there's a great likelihood that the behavior will go back to what was going on before. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the issue that we're speaking about now is what creates the motivation for us to maintain a particular behavior change. It would have to be something inside of us. So this course has a huge objective here. It wants to stimulate an internal motivation in you guys as participants in the class to want to change your behavior and your thinking about leadership and ethics. That's a massive change that we're looking for. All right. So how successful do you all think the course might be in doing that? Do you think it'll happen immediately?
Over time, over time.
We'll see. And this is one of the things I want you all to reflect about. Do you think this course will achieve the objectives that it's identifying, at least from your perspective? Because this is one of the reasons why I asked you all in your initial analysis to write your responses to those expectations. Also observe, try and think about how you feel about the topic that we're talking about at this point in time. I should probably put that in the reflections for you all to do that. I mean, in terms of what are your personal philosophies of leadership? Not that you may have thought about it, but what is your thinking about leadership at this point in time? Because what we want to do is to look at before and after and see if there's any sort of change. So this is a tall order because here we're talking about behavior modifications from internal stimulus or internal stimuli, meaning that those types of changes tend to stick as opposed to those that require external stimulation. Because once the stimulation, whatever is stimulating the individual, is absent, then you may in fact experience a situation where the students or the individual doesn't feel they need to maintain that anymore. All right, so that's something that we could look at in that particular instance. All right, so let's move on. So of course, the two textbooks that we're utilizing, the ones that I've had you download, are the Exploring Leadership by these authors here, Comives, Lucas, and Mahon, and the Leadership Experience by the Daft. Now, the Daft is oftentimes edited and new editions, but we're using this edition because, in essence, the information and the there's no significant change. What tends to change from one edition to the other is usually going to be the case studies and examples that they utilize. So that'll be the only benefit that we can look at from there. All right, so let's start looking into chapter 1 and the introduction here. We are going to be paying attention to the modern leadership models today, and we're going to do some retrospective studies of previous models of leadership. We especially want to apply the concepts of leadership to look at our Caribbean experience, in particular our local experiences with leadership, because it's important for us to do that. All right. Okay, so now in the model that we're going to be looking at, leadership is defined as a relational and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. So the biggest takeout in this is that leadership is about the relationship that you have with somebody. And that's going to be an important element for us to follow through with it. The model that we're doing is actually called the relational leadership model. Oftentimes, is given an acronym RLM model. all right, the relational leadership model. And it's because of that particular focus on the nature of the relationship you have, both in terms of how well you get along with people, how well you communicate, and so on, and the degree of ethical value or the type of ethics that you demonstrate as a leader. These are going to be critical and important things because we've probably come across in the past a number of leaders whose focus has always been, especially if you work in companies with strong leaders, their focus is always going to be profit driven or outcomes oriented. Even in your classrooms, a lot of teachers are outcomes oriented. They want to see you pass exam, they want to see you achieve something, and primarily that achievement is for very selfish means because what they're trying to do is to make sure that the company that they own or the at the end of the year when they have their own their own assessments, they're seen as being successful. So how do you go about doing that is the process that we're going to be looking at in terms of the relationships you've developed as a leader in those circumstances. So we're looking at that from the model, from how this model is going to look at it. All right. So the first thing is the definition. Leadership is about the relationship and the nature of that relationship that we have about it. So the big takeaway from this definition is that leadership is about relationships. Now, how can we look at leadership in different frames of reference? So, for example, in political sciences, leadership addresses the issue of power, how you get power, and how you use that power to influence others. So the issues that we're paying attention to here now is the acquisition of power. How do you go about getting into power, and what do you use that power to do? Now, when we think about it from political things, if we look at these gentlemen here, or even these people here, we could look at these individuals because they have amassed a certain amount of power based upon the position they've found themselves in their countries, correct? So each one of these are leaders of very large and powerful countries, and right now they're in direct conflict with each other. Would you agree with that? And how they go about dealing with the what kind of relationship do you perceive them having in relation to that? I brought up this picture as well because this is so important because of what's taking place in the Ukraine. The NATO summit in Madrid that took place in 2022 was important because they were laying some groundwork down for how they were going to go about treating with Russia and its aggression in the Ukraine. Now, it's important that in this NATO meeting, Russia wasn't present, and they invited the leader from the Ukraine to come in because he's not a member of this committee. Um, so it's important for us to understand that because the actions of these smaller groups of individuals has very large impacts on people around the world. So it means that they have a lot of influence. And that degree of influence is what the political sphere of leadership looks at. How you get power and how do you use that power to influence others? And what are your, at the end of the day, what are your motivations for doing what you're doing? And in a lot of instances, we can see that most countries, as leaders, their leaders are very myopic in their view. They look only for what is best for them and their people, as opposed to having a broader scope of thinking about what's best for everybody. Because sometimes what's best for everybody is not necessarily the best for any individual country or person for that matter. Another sphere of leadership can be looked at through management. So in this framework, what we're looking at here is how best do I manipulate the resources I have available to, to maximize the output and earning potential of my organization. So it looks at the effectiveness in terms of the outcomes of my relationship with the subordinates that I have to work with. And that's an important element because we measure the success of managers by how well they do. Now let's look at these people here. How many of you all recognize the vast majority of these individuals here? And why are they listed here in 2021 as top business leaders? Can you make out how many of you all can see who's who here? Let me make it larger for you guys to look at. See if that helps. How many of these people do you recognize? Call some names.
I think Oprah, the guy below,
Jay-Z.
but I don't know his name.
Right, I can see Jay-Z. Somebody else is saying something. What's that?
Oprah and the guy below her. I think it's Elon Musk or something.
Right, okay, Elon Musk and Oprah, right? What about the guy above Oprah?
Facebook guy.
That's
That's
the
not Virgin Records guy.
No, the one above is
Mark Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg, right? And the guy to the, well, I guess it's to the right of Oprah is Branston. He's from Virgin Records. All right,
Yeah.
so who's next to Branston? Who's that guy with the microphone in his hand?
The one down the couch look like it's a Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, right? Now who's next to him? The one that kind of mosaic of all those things. Next to Bill Gates.
Jeff Bezos.
Right. What's he famous for?
Amazon.
Right, there you go. All right. Now some of the others might not, like for instance, this Asian looking guy here. Anybody knows him? Or what company is associated with him?
Jack Ma.
Right. Well, what organization is he associated with? Alibaba.
So is it Alibaba?
Yes, Alibaba. Yeah. All right. So you know Jay-Z. I'm not sure who this lady is. Anybody can make her out? She looks very, very familiar, but I can't put her name on her face. And when I was doing some searching, I couldn't locate some of the images about her. No, I think this lady is in the IMF. This person over here looks like that woman who went to jail at one point in time. What's her name again? She used to be
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart.
Yeah, I think this gentleman here with the glasses on top here, this is Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. This gentleman I'm not sure about, but again, a lot of these are European leaders as well. So like this guy down here is also somebody I can't think of. But understand, I mean, if I go back to the listing of the top business leaders of 2021, you could probably find them and have a discussion with them. That makes sense so far, guys? All right, so let's move on from the management sphere, because remember what is known about these guys is that they are successful business people, but they don't necessarily have good relationships with the people that they interact with. So like Jeff Bezos, for example, in Amazon, has a really horrible relationship, or I should say reputation, with his employees, where the employees, for example, complain bitterly about the type of working conditions. Elon Musk is known to be quite what's a good I want to use? Quite I mean, he had this whole thing when he bought Twitter and started to behave like an idiot. The word will come to mind. Oprah is one who's very social, philanthropic kind of person. Same thing with this gentleman here, Richard Branson. Bill Gates is supposedly one of the biggest philanthropic forces in the world today, but a lot of people are very suspicious about his motivation behind that. A lot of people have that fear that he was part and parcel of the vaccination, the chip vaccination thing the conspiracy theories that we have. And of course, this gentleman from Facebook comes into a lot of criticism because of the lack of security in a lot of the software that he's been using, and people's loss of privacy in terms of how their things are looked at. All right, so another framework that we could look at leadership from is through the concept of anthropology. Now, when we think of anthropology, we think of these guys who go around, archaeologists and stuff like, go around digging up bones and whatnot. So, but anthropology is not only about looking at bones, but it's about examining organizations and people and society from various aspects. So they look at the culture of the society, they look at the language that they use, the tools that they utilize in their lifespan, and they look at what symbols were important to them, and they look at their norms and behaviors. So in anthropology, there's the aspect of cultural anthropology, as we just mentioned there, physical anthropology, which would look at the artifacts that they find about, the language, the linguistics and language, and then the actual archaeology element, going and discovering. But if we were to examine our own society today, what would represent our society today? What if we were to think about 100 years from now, people coming and digging up our homes that were now covered and society lost and whatnot? What do you think they would find? What would classify us as being the most important things in our society today? Not something like this? How many of you all have these and walk around like this all the time? All right, so we'll find all these little devices all over the place. You understand? What will be our beverage of choice? What would be? How do we go about communicating? We communicate with emojis and symbols and abbreviations of text. All those kind of things. Memes. There you go. Right. All those kind of things will become our cultural anthropology, and the physical anthropology that would support that, and the archaeology to find that would dig up phones, and it'll dig up devices all over the place. I mean, if I look around my own room right now, I can see I'm surrounded by technology to be able to teach this class. If they were to come and find me dead and buried here, I mean, they're just going to find me with a pile of plastic and metal around me. That's all they're going to get. That's another element that we can look at. What we held as being the most important things in our lives. All right. So that anthropology speaks to looking backwards at the nature of our leadership models from the past. How in the past did we achieve or look at leadership? That's the thing that they're going to be focused on, and when it comes to leadership. So from the anthropological view, leadership is looked upon in retrospect. So that's something you can think about too. And it's something that we're going to examine here as well. Another way in which we can look at leadership is through history. And when we look at history, we look at the people or the leaders that rose up during significant times in our world when there was major change taking place. So during that period, you usually have leaders that come up. So during World War II, for example, these gentlemen rose to prominence as leaders in the societies around us. So you guys recognize these individuals?
Yes, sir.
All right. So who can give me their names, starting from the left?
So, Roosevelt, Winston Churchill,
Yep.
Hitler, and Stalin.
Very good. What are they best known for, each one? So, anybody knows the back history of World War II? So this guy here, Adolf Hitler, decided to try and take over the world. And these three guys got together and formed this axis of allies, and they defeated them. And then afterwards, these guys then turned around and betrayed Stalin. All right, because that's how Russia emerged out of the Cold War and that type of stuff. So it's quite interesting. But during that period of time, they were looked upon as the people responsible for moving the world out of major conflict. All right, especially that type of World War conflict. All right, let's look at what about this gentleman here? Who's familiar with him? Who that?
Martin Luther King.
Right. What is he synonymous with? What in history? What is he known for?
Civil rights.
Right. The civil rights movements in the United States, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a dream speech. In fact, this I think is a photo from that particular speech that he gave. That famous speech that he gave there on thing. And of course, he was an individual who was assassinated for following his beliefs well, they never really sorted out whoever did it. All right. But he was significant and became, up to this day, is still the image that we have when we associate it with the civil rights movement in the United States. How about this guy? Anybody knows this funny looking fella?
So is that Stokely Carmichael?
Yep. Do you know his other name? His
Kwame Ture.
right. Who's he?
He was involved in our Black Power movement here.
Correct.
A civil rights person as well.
Right. So he was a friend of Martin Luther King, and he brought that civil rights Black awareness movement to Trinidad and took part in a revolution here in Trinidad in the 60s as well. So although, and in our history, he becomes a pivotal person that brought the recognition that colonialism in itself, not just in the United States, but colonialism in the English environment or the English Empire was also rooted in a lot of racism and hatred of or subduing the masses. And he therefore came over here because he rose to prominence when he was in school in the United States. In fact, any of you all ever looked at the Black Klansman, that film? Any of you all ever looked at that?
The new one, sir? Recently?
Sorry, the new one?
Recently?
Yep, about 5 or 6 years ago, they did a film called The Black Klansman.
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah. But it wasn't so long ago. The one that I watched was recently-ish, within like about 2-3 years ago.
Right. Did you realize that there was a character that well, Kwame Ture featured in it?
I honestly can't remember.
Right. Who was the black leader, the black civil rights leader that they were protecting? If you can look back at it, but the black leader that they were protecting when they started when they began the show was Kwame Ture. He came to speak at this place, and they were supposed to do a hit on him, kind of thing like that. All right, so it's something interesting. Look at these other influential leaders in history. So we already met this guy. This is me bring this into so we met Roosevelt already. Anybody knows this lady here? I should probably ask, how many of you all recognize any of these people? So we have a couple that we met already. This is Stalin here. This is Winston Churchill with that famous V for victory sign that he used a lot. This is Adolf Hitler. We met Martin Luther King. Anybody knows this girl? This woman, I should say. This girl.
Is that Margaret Thatcher?
Yes, the Iron Lady herself, or some people would say the witch is dead. All right. And what about this lovely looking lady down here?
Marilyn Monroe.
Right, yes. Famous for and important in the history of theater and
Norma
movies.
G.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, say that again.
Her real name should be Norma Jean.
Norma Jean, yeah. Yeah. What about these people here? I have
Beatles.
I think that, yeah.
yeah, that's the Beatles and the gentleman next to them with the greasy hair.
Elvis.
Elvis Presley. What are they important for in history?
Music. The movement
Right.
of music. Like
Movement of
advancement in music.
All right. What about this gentleman here, as opposed to this gentleman here? These two people, they're related to each other. All right. So this might be a little more obscure because this was during the Cold War. This is Khrushchev. He was the premier of Russia, and this is I suddenly can't remember his name, but he was the last premier of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev. And he was the last leader, and then Bolshin came on after him, but he was important in disaggregating the communist bloc. It was really interesting when that took place. But Khrushchev was one of the guys who was adamant that he was that the Americans were wrong and the Soviets were right, kind of thing. And it's important that Khrushchev and Gorbachev is here, because right above them you have another pair of leaders that were in direct conflict with each other. You all recognize this cowboy-looking individual here?
So Reagan.
Yep, that's Ronald Reagan, and
Ronald
this
Reagan.
and this
Adolf
gentleman,
Hitler.
right? This is Castro.
Castro. Fidel
Yeah.
Castro.
Fidel Castro. So Fidel Castro was the leader of the socialist movement in Cuba, and Ronald Reagan was, of course, very diametrically opposed to him. Next to him is actually this is Teddy Roosevelt, who was from a different, as opposed to Franklin Roosevelt, who was during World War II. Teddy Roosevelt was in World War One, and this is important. Anybody recognizes this gentleman here with the mouse?
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney, yes, very important. Yes, very good. I think the pair that is envisioned here, well, I guess you can recognize this gentleman here as Mandela. The guy next to him, you might not be, but this is Cecil Roach. He was the leader of South Africa, or what they call Rhodesia at that point in time, who created the apartheid system, which is one of the reasons why they kind of put those photos next to each other. And the reason why Stalin is next to this gentleman is because they collectively created communism. This is, anybody recognizes this guy here, Karl Marx? No? It was based on his philosophy and teachings that they were able to develop this this theory or this concept of socialism and sorry?
Is it Marxism?
Marxism, yeah. So this is Karl Marx. All right, so this picture of the person on the moon, that'll be Armstrong, correct?
Yes, sir. Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, so he was important because of the strides in space. And of course, we have this gentleman here who wore nappy all the time.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Right? Sorry?
Gandhi?
Yes, Mahatma Gandhi. Yeah, very good. So all of these people were influential at some point. Now there's a couple. This guy here, I'm not too sure who he is. Nor this guy here, but I suspect that they were important in different places. Their significance, I wasn't able to find them. I went trying to look for them, but couldn't locate them. And the images weren't clear enough for me to make secondary comparisons. So let's leave that for now and then move on. But we understand the importance of looking at leaders in the through the perspective of history, because history will tend to always tell us who was in charge back then and what did they stand for, and do their messages hold on for today? Has their influence today held? So, for example, we could say in terms of the Beatles and Elvis, their impact on the world of music and how it went was important. The same thing with Walt Disney and Marilyn Monroe, because they're very, very important in terms of the impact that they had on the sphere of influence that they were taking place. Um, they have a lasting impact on things around them. So those are important. Okay, and that's one of the things that we look at. Now, another framework to look at leadership is through psychology and sociology. Psych will look at the individual, sociology will look at the groups, and look at how we interact with each other. And importantly, we have these individuals who participated in the creation of some of the most important theories and postulations about leadership and the disciplines of psychology and sociology. So you have Sigmund Freud here. You have not Karl Marx. This is the other one. Marx, Lenin.
Maslow.
Nah, is that Maslow? I think it's Lenin, actually. And this gentleman on this side here, anybody recognizes him? I'll have to check on this one. This gentleman in the middle, but I think this is Lenin. He also worked on the concepts of socialization and socialism. But also important, these guys were important in developing educational theory as well as psychoanalysis and that type of stuff. This gentleman here, for example, B.F. Skinner, the gentleman on the right, he was really important in the area of adult education. And a lot of the adult theory that we look at, or adult education theory, begins from some of his a lot of his work. All right, and these are some of the different leadership theories that came up, especially the areas of behavioral and situational and contingency. These theories borrowed a lot from the work done in psychology and sociology. So those are things that we have to pay attention to, and one of the reasons why we look at it. So I want to get a couple of answers here, one or two. So how does either your field of study or your field of work at this point in time approach leadership? Now, I can't remember people's backgrounds, but I know we didn't talk to Fabian. Fabian, where do you work? Or what let's start with, what program do you study?
Bachelor's in radiography.
Right. And what is, how does that feel? All right, so you need to turn down your volume a bit. Your speakers are a bit too loud. All right, so how does your field of radiology approach leadership? How do people arrive at being leaders in the field of radiology? Fabian?
Well, I'm not sure. I just guess practice, and yeah, that's it. I guess.
Right, so in essence, what you're talking about, experience.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let me ask Kimberly, what field do you study or work in?
I did a bachelor's in accounting.
All right. So how do people arrive at positions of leadership in accounting?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Because
Do you work in an accounting office at this point?
no.
Okay, so how people arrive at leadership positions in accounting is through certification and experience.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you understand? So it tries to encompass the level of the amount of time you've spent practicing the field, as well as the amount of certification you've been able to acquire. All right. So anybody else wants to speak of another area that maybe we, Abigail, what about you? What program do you do? Abigail? Yes, the microphone open, but we're not hearing you if you're speaking. All right, so now, if you understand how your field of study approaches leadership, what about yourself? How do you feel about leadership and how people end up in leadership positions? That's a question you need to be asking yourself in terms of what your perceptions are currently of leadership across the board. All right, that makes sense for you guys. It's a little work that you all need to be doing in your mind. It's not something that is deliverable, but it's something that you ought to start thinking about. Now, I like this quotation coming from the text itself about the superficial leader. This is something that I find is very important for us to pay attention to. The superficial leader cannot see how things happen, even though the evidence is everywhere. This leader is swept up by drama, sensation, and excitement. And all this confusion is blinding. That's the superficial leader. But the leader who returns again and again to awareness of process has a deep sense of how things happen. All right, so this actually comes from the text itself. It's part of the introductory areas. And what I found was we tend to have a lot of superficial leaders around us. And one in particular that comes to mind was the past president of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, this picture to me encompasses exactly the nature of his leadership style. He enjoyed confrontation and was very aware of how things looked. Right? Let's look at how look. So the context of this photo was taken during one of the conferences. I think it was the Kyoto conference, but it had something to do with the environmental um, policies that were being discussed at the point in time. And the Trump administration withdrew the United States from all of those conventions that looked at conserving and stopping using coal and oil and trying to cut back on emissions. And when he did that, it basically annoyed the rest of everybody because whereas the rest of the world was trying to move to a place where they can reduce emissions, he was moving the clock backwards basically. And this picture is one of those pictures during the period of when that was taking place, where they were trying to talk to him about the logic of what he was doing or the lack of logic. And to me, this is indicative of the superficial leader, the one who's simply caught up on how things are happening and being caught up with the drama and not really thinking about what is taking place and why we're doing what we're doing. That's an important element that I think we want to pay attention to because far too often the leadership around us appears to be reactionary and not proactive. And that's that. If we think about our leadership in the area of crime, for example, crime is something that has been plaguing our nation for a long period of time. but it always appears to me that we're always trying to play catch up. We're not thinking and analyzing the data to be able to do some predictive analysis of what is likely to come in the future. Now, is there anybody here among us who's from the Ministry of National Security, either in one form or the other? They may be able to, or if you have an connection to somebody who's a police officer or somebody who works in that field, who's willing to share their thoughts on it. Of course, it's just your thoughts, not necessarily policy. Or how do you all personally feel about how our leaders today are dealing with the threat of criminal activity in our country? So this is where people participate, guys. Well, are we done? Or do I need to call names?
So I think the leaders would only start to act on like the criminal situation in the country when it starts to affect them, like when it publicly really start to affect them.
That's true, and that's the whole thing about superficial leadership. It only becomes important if it threatens their personal positions. And to me, that is horrible, because you're not anticipating that it's sort of like, it starts to rain and you make sure that your place is covered and your place is safe and everybody else could go to hell, kind of thing. That's the impression I get sometimes about the leadership that we have around us sometimes, and it doesn't bode well for us trusting people in the future when it comes to that, because if this is their behavior during that period of time, then it's likely that they're going to not be in a position to be able to help us move forward again. All right. Okay, so that's interesting. So I want to take a little break. We have about 40 more slides to go through. We should be able to move through this. And this is where I'm going to introduce you to the framework of the relational leadership model. So we want to start there. So this would be a good time for us to take a little, let's say, 15 minutes or so. Get up, walk around, take a little break. All right, guys? Yes? No? Maybe?
So, so in that 15 minutes, I will have to cross over to the other class. So
That's
I'm
fine.
gonna log back in, okay?
All right, that's fine.
All right, and thanks again for understanding, sir.
No problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the recording at this point. I think I should be able to do that, shouldn't I? Oh, this says stop.